What's up, guys? I'm Josh Elliott, and 2018 was an interesting year for movies. I'm pretty disappointed with how 2018 turned out, because the past couple years, specifically 2017, were such great years for movies, and 2018, when looking back on it, I don't think will be that memorable. Most of the movies that everyone expected to be good were good, most of the movies that everyone was expecting to be bad were bad, and whenever there were surprises, they weren't by a huge margin, so as a result, most of the movies that came out last year were pretty standard. This wasn't a bad year for movies, it's just pretty weak and forgettable. However, despite that, there is always a light in the darkness, and these 10 movies shine the brightest for me. Because today we are talking about my 10 best movies of 2018. Now, before we get this list started, keep in mind, I saw 101 movies last year, but that does not mean I saw every movie that came out last year, and so if a movie that you liked is not on this list, I either didn't see it or I didn't agree with you, because this is just a personal list, these are just my opinions, so if you think another movie deserved to be on this list, let me know in the comments. So, without further ado, let's get started with number 10. Number 10. The Dawn Wall. Two documentaries about climbers were released last year, and while Free Solo may be the one up for the Academy Award, the lesser-known The Dawn Wall should absolutely get credit where it's deserved. The Dawn Wall tells the story of Tommy Caldwell and Kevin Jorgeson and their attempt to climb the so-called impossible Dawn Wall of El Capitan in Yosemite National Park. While it may not have the life or death stakes of Free Solo, the emotional stakes are what carried the Dawn Wall, as well as the nail-biting suspense of whether they'll complete their climb, the cringe-inducing images that show just how physically tasking this climb is, the beautiful cinematography shot by men who were literally suspended thousands of feet above the ground, and the perfectly balanced storytelling that makes you feel as though you're a part of this climb instead of just watching it. I could go on and on. There are so many things that make the Dawn Wall brilliant, but what's so upsetting is that nobody knows about it. While all of your film friends are gushing over Free Solo at the Academy Awards, go and give the Dawn Wall a watch. Trust me, you won't regret it. Number 9. Won't You Be My Neighbor? As someone who never watched Mr. Rogers as a kid, I was completely amazed by the emotional weight I felt from Won't You Be My Neighbor. While not exactly redefining the documentary formula, Won't You Be My Neighbor delivers a beautifully told story about one of the kindest, most thoughtful, caring, and loving men to have ever walked this earth, and it made me cry 4 times. It starts off as a fascinating story about a television show that never should have worked, but reached mass success due to the motivation and passion of its creator. And by the end, it's a heartwarming, tear-jerking, emotional journey that has the most important message of any movie this year. Be kind to other people. Won't You Be My Neighbor not only honors the love Mr. Rogers gave to the world, but it encourages us to continue spreading that love, and most importantly, it reminds us how much we already are loved by others. In the hateful, divided times we're currently living in, I can't think of a movie that needs to be seen more than Won't You Be My Neighbor. Number 8. Roma. Currently one of the frontrunners for Best Picture, Roma tells the story of Cleo, a Mexican maid working for an upper-class dysfunctional family against the backdrop of the 1970s political turmoil in Mexico, and it's easily the most beautiful film of 2018, visually and emotionally. It's the type of film that lures you in with its striking and atmospheric visuals, intrigues you with its multi-layered characters and dynamic environment, sweeps you off your feet without you even realizing it, and then breaks your heart and mends it back again in the most delicately profound ways. Alfonso Cuarón delivers career best work here, bringing an effortless style and beauty to a story that could have easily been boring in the hands of a lesser director, and the performances of Yalitza Aparicio and Marina de Tavira are the perfect combination of subtle and sentimental. In what's been a pretty weak year for movies, Roma reminds me just how stunning and beautiful films can be. It's a shame that Roma was primarily released on Netflix, because a film like this needs to be seen on the big screen in order to fully capture its majestic essence. If Roma is playing in any theater near you, go and see it, before it wins Best Picture. Number 7. Searching. When I first went and saw Searching back in August, I was expecting to like it. Little did I know that I was about to be treated to one of the cleverest, most intense crime thrillers I'd ever seen. Searching tells the story of David Kim, a father who envelops himself in trying to discover what happened to his 16-year-old daughter Margot after she goes missing. The film is shot entirely from a computer screen, but instead of using this as a cheap gimmick, Searching takes the smarter route, and uses this style to not only show a side of investigations that hardly ever gets shown on screen, but also make it interesting. The story elevates more and more as the stakes rise and more information is revealed, taking the audience along for the ride and treating them with respect instead of spoon-feeding them the answers. John Cho and Deborah Messing also stray from their comedic roots and deliver phenomenally intense leading performances. But all that aside, the best thing about Searching is that it's actually about something. It's about the struggles of being a single parent, the secret lives we keep from our loved ones, and the lengths parents will go to in order to protect their kids. All of these themes come to a climax in what I consider to be the most jaw-dropping moment of any film last year. Want to know what it is? Go and watch Searching and find out. Number 6. Mid-90s. Unlike past years, 2018 didn't have many big A24 releases, but the ones that were released made a hell of an impact. And what I think is the most underrated A24 release of 2018 is Jonah Hill's directorial debut, Mid-90s. It's actually kind of hard for me to talk about why I love Mid-90s so much, because the experience of watching it is so surreal and transporting that I can barely even put it into words. Mid-90s is the type of film that's so dedicated to accurately portraying a certain environment and culture that at times it doesn't even feel like you're watching a movie. The cinematography, the music, the dialogue, the set design, the costumes, the performances, all of the elements that went into the making of this movie work so well together and bring such a dynamic, total life to this world that will make any 90s kid feel nostalgic. But this movie is much more than just a nostalgia trip. It's about the desire to be accepted by people you look up to. It's about what makes a friendship healthy or toxic. And it's about the loss of innocence and the triumphant yet depressing transition from childhood into adulthood. Mid-90s may not have the most cohesive plot of the year, but it's one of the most encapsulating theater experiences I've had in a long time. And it gave me an insight into a culture that I never would have gotten to experience otherwise. Take my word for it. Go and see Mid-90s and prepare to be transported. Number 5. 3 Identical Strangers. Wow, 2018 was a great year for documentaries. We had the riveting The Dawn Wall, the transformative They Shall Not Grow Old, the heartfelt Won't You Be My Neighbor, and my personal favorite, the shocking 3 Identical Strangers. 3 Identical Strangers is a prime example of taking an interesting subject that you probably know nothing about and making it abundantly clear just how important it is. 3 Identical Strangers tells the story of 3 triplets who were separated at birth only to discover each other in college, but that is merely scratching the surface. This story has so many more deeper layers that it spends its entire runtime exploring, unraveling new details and shocking facts that caused my jaw to drop further with each reveal. 3 Identical Strangers has so many different stories going on under its surface that it's hard to believe it's even real. But it is, and that's exactly why people should see it. Situations like this need to be heard about so that people in positions of power can stop controlling and manipulating the lives of innocent people for their own benefit. I'm not even going to try and unpack all of the messages this movie is trying to provoke. You'll just have to go and see it for yourself. Number 4. Bad Times at the El Royale. Taking place at a hotel along the California-Nevada border, Bad Times at the El Royale tells the story of a group of strangers and the events that ensue during their insane one-night stay at the titular El Royale. I can't really talk about Bad Times without spoiling it, so I'm just going to gush over it for a bit. Okay, so the film is absolutely dripping in style, with the sets, costumes, makeup and hair, and music just screaming retro 70s. Why wasn't this nominated for an Oscar for any of those categories? Also, the directing is freaking gorgeous. There's a one-take scene in here that's one of the best movie moments of 2018, period. The lighting is absolutely on fire here as well, no pun intended for those of you who've seen the movie. Oh, and the cast, the freaking cast! Jeff Bridges, Cynthia Erivo, and Lewis Pullman all deliver Oscar-worthy performances, and even the weaklings of the cast managed to pull their weight, and yet this wasn't nominated for a SAG award for Best Ensemble? What? But yeah, you get the gist. Bad Times at the El Royale is a high-speed roller coaster of a movie, and unlike the title suggests, I had such a great time at the El Royale. Number 3. A Quiet Place. What happened to A Quiet Place? When this movie first came out back in April, it was the next big thing. People were singing its praises from the rooftops and calling it one of the best horror movies ever made. And now it's pretty much regarded by everyone as extremely overrated, and I don't quite understand why. Because A Quiet Place, while I won't call it one of the best horror movies of all time, is at least one of the best, if not the best, thrillers of 2018. Telling the story of a family living in a post-apocalyptic world where any audible noise can lead to a gruesome death at the hands of horrifying creatures, A Quiet Place has one of the most unique and gripping horror movie concepts in recent years, which not only raises interest in the story, but makes the suspense all the more hard-hitting by forcing the audience to shut the hell up and be quiet. A Quiet Place is such a simple story, but so effective in its intense execution and heart-pounding sequences. But the best part about A Quiet Place is that it's not just a fun horror movie with an original concept. It's actually about something. It's about family, and it's about parenting. It's about sticking together in times of turmoil, and while those may be cliche messages in most movies today, seeing them against the backdrop of a horror movie and being able to relate to them without hardly any knowledge of these characters due to the lack of dialogue, I think that's pretty amazing. While the public may have jumped the gun on A Quiet Place and run out of praise too quickly, I'm still silently thinking about just how profound it is. Number 2. The Favorite. Few directors working today can make me as uncomfortable as Yorgos Lanthimos, and with his track record of The Lobster, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, and now The Favorite, he could eventually become as big a household name as Wes Anderson if he keeps it up. The Favorite is about the reign of Queen Anne and the treacherous and deceitful tactics that 2 of her servants used to compete for her attention and therefore rise in power. The Favorite is unlike any historical movie I've ever seen, because it strips away all of the unnecessary major historical events that we can find in a textbook, and instead tells a much darker story of what was going on under the surface of the political power structures of 18th century England. Yorgos Lanthimos uses his strikingly uncomfortable style to expose just how ugly and unstable politics were back then, and this wonderfully weird and mischievous ensemble cast perfectly adds to the film's absurd tone. Olivia Colman terrifically walks the line between annoying and sympathetic, Emma Stone is delightfully devilish here, and Rachel Weisz is a dominating powerhouse as always. The Favorite just brings history to life in a way that I've never seen before, because it's not a film about history. It's a film about friendship and love, and how people can abuse them for power. Something that's just as relevant today as it was back in the 1800s. Now, before I get to number 1 on this list, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge all of the honorable mentions, because despite the fact that this year was pretty weak, there were still quite a few really good movies that just couldn't make it onto this list. But just because they weren't good enough to make it to my top 10 doesn't mean that they should go without praise. So without further ado, here are my honorable mentions. Annihilation, Avengers: Infinity War, BlacKkKlansman, Boy Erased, Crazy Rich Asians, Green Book, Isle of Dogs, Leave No Trace, Paddington 2, Tag, and Wildlife. Number 1. 8th Grade. 8th Grade is the type of film that I will have a special place for in my heart for the rest of my life, because Bo Burnham, despite being a 28-year-old male ex-YouTuber who's never written or directed a movie before, understands social anxiety, middle school awkwardness, and the current technology-driven younger generation so well that it's absolutely stunning. 8th Grade may be the most accurate film about middle school ever made. If mid-90s was a time capsule about being a kid in the 90s, 8th Grade is a time capsule about being a kid right now. This movie is smart enough and wise enough to see the world as it actually is today and be able to comment on it in a relatable but still meaningful way. I could go on for days about the brilliant delivery of the jokes, the dedication and hilarity of the cast, the energy of the music, or the accuracy of how technology is actually used in the film. But the real reason 8th grade works is because of the heart that exists behind all of those things. 8th grade is a love letter to people with anxiety, people who question their self-worth, specifically teenage girls who feel like they're suffocating under the weight of the world, and it sits them down, pats them on the back and says, "It's okay." If you're a kid in 8th grade or the parent of a kid in 8th grade, go and see this movie. I've watched this movie 5 times and it just gets better every time I see it. And it's my favorite movie of 2018. Well, folks, that's it. Those are my top 10 movies of 2018. I am very surprised by this list. This is not the kind of list that I would usually make for my top 10. 3 of the movies on this list were documentaries. Not many of them were awards contenders. I think because there weren't a lot of big surprises last year, a lot of the movies on my list tended to slip away from the public eye. And so even though you may not have seen many of the movies on my list, I really encourage you to go and see them because they impacted me and hopefully they'll impact you guys. What did you guys think of my top 10 list? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Also, if you're a fan of this channel, let me know what you think of the format of this video, because I've wanted to experiment with video essays for a while, and I thought what better way to start it than with a top 10 video. So any feedback would be greatly appreciated because I really enjoyed creating this video, and I want to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments what your favorite movies of 2018 were, and what you think of 2018 as a whole for movies. Do you think it was a weak year for movies like I do, or do you think it was a great year, and let me know why. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to The Film Nerds, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Letterboxd, hit that bell to get post notifications. Thank you guys so much for watching, and be sure to keep a lookout for my top 10 worst movies of 2018 video coming soon. Peace out.